Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Championship Showcase, Secret Sports Success from the playing field of competition to the field of life. We are speaking with inspirational sports leaders who are sharing their life strategies and empowering messages of hope and purpose to support those athletes that are seeking to make a successful transition from the field of competition to the field of life. My name is Dominic Militello. We're so glad you could join us today. We have an incredible guest with us today, so let's jump right in. Today we're speaking with Miss Caitie Goddard, a former dedicated full scholarship Division I women's basketball player for the University of Detroit Mercy. Caitie was not only named the Horizon League Freshman of the Year for women's basketball, but during her 4-year career, she had 57 starts and shot 36.7% from behind the arc. 8 years post-graduation, she still ranks 9th in school history in successful three-pointers. By her senior year, Caitie was vice president of the Horizon League Student Athlete Advisory Committee. She has received a Bachelor's of Business Administration degree from the University of Detroit Mercy and a Master's of Public Policy degree from the University of Michigan. While in graduate school, Caitie was selected to work on a fellowship in Kampala, Uganda with Global Alliance for Legal Aid. Her background with fundraising, leadership development, and international entrepreneurship are skills she brings to her role at IC3 Academy, in which she co-founded and is a director. IC3 stands for I Can Create Change. It's an intensive one-week academy for individuals who dream of creating social change but lack the resources or the network to bring their ideas to fruition. Caitie also worked with the University of Michigan and the National Institute for Speech and Hearing in Kerala, India, to create a national website for the Indian disability community. She has lived and worked in the United States, Spain, Uganda, New Zealand, and India. She has organized and led fundraising cycling trips to Vietnam, raising $20,000 for charity, and mentored international ambassadors who raised $45,000 for the Eat So They Can campaign through the Global Volunteer Network Foundation. Most recently, Caitie developed the curriculum for Global Volunteer Network Foundation's Youth Ambassador Program, working with 200 Australian and New Zealand youth ages 16 to 20 to develop leadership skills and become agents for change in their communities and globally. This fall, she'll be co-teaching the capstone course, Entrepreneurship, Innovation, and Social Change at the UN-mandated University for Peace Center for Executive Education. She's also co-founder of Good Travel, an ethical, sustainable travel company with a mission to transform the travel industry into a force for good. She speaks Spanish, Luganda, the major language in the Central African country of Uganda. So, you guys, you can see why it makes sense to have Miss Caitie Goddard with us today. Caitie, welcome to the Championship Showcase.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
Well, we know, obviously, from your intro that you're very busy, and we really appreciate you taking some time for your busy schedule to speak with us today. I have to say, for most of us, just getting to the grocery store and the post office is a full day. How is it that one person is able to do so much?
Well, I think you were really generous with your introduction, and certainly not all of those were done all at the same time. I definitely have my moments where I, too, struggle to get ready and motivated to go to the grocery store. So I think it's having people around you that get you motivated as well, and being in the presence of good people.
Well, great. Well, I think that has a lot to do with it. But for those that may not be as familiar with you as we are, can you tell us a little bit about your background and just a little bit about your story, and then we'll kind of get into some of these other questions.
Yeah, sure, I'm happy to, and I'll try to do it in a brief summary because I do think it is a bit, it's not the traditional path that most people go down, but to be quite honest, until I was through undergrad and doing a business degree, I had my life planned out where right before graduation, I got a job offer from Chrysler and in the automotive industry, and that's where I initially started my career. So this path has definitely, it wasn't something I knew from the beginning is what I wanted to do. And it was through a series of different things that kind of got me thinking about what I really wanted to do with my life, and I was fortunate to figure it out a bit earlier. But as far as what I'm doing right now and how I got here, I'm really interested in and wanted to learn more about how the world works. I had an opportunity to travel to Lebanon when I was a senior in college. And when I went there, it was the first time I realized that I just didn't know a whole lot about anything. I felt that way, at least, where I wanted to learn more about different cultures and different people, and I felt quite ignorant. And so that was kind of what spurred my interest in travel and also international development. I was really frustrated to see such a big disparity between people and income inequality at a whole different level. And so that was a motivational point for me where it sparked my interest in what I do today, which is more focused on international social change and then also how people affect their local communities wherever they live.
Okay, great. Well, we're certainly going to dive into that here in just a minute. For those that are listening, our audience, mostly those athletes that are transitioning,
yeah.
Let's talk initially about your drive to be a competitor. What was behind your drive to be such a fierce competitor?
I think I just love sports. I think I'm more motivated internally as opposed to I'm really competitive with myself, I should say. So ever since I was a kid, I played every sport I could possibly play. I was really serious about soccer as well as basketball, and then I played softball for a bit and volleyball, and I loved everything about sports. And I think part of it, which my guess is most people who would listen would relate to, is it's really nice to be good at something. And I was athletic, and so that usually came quite easy to me. And so my competitive drive came because when I realized I was had some natural gifts, I just wanted to see how far I could take it. And I loved being great at something that I loved doing. And so my drive was to be the best I could. And when I was really young, I was so convinced I was going to be the first girl in the NBA. So I think that my dream was to sign basketball cards with my name on it. And so I think that was a bit of motivation for a few years when I was young. And then it was just also I loved winning, and I loved being on great teams where we could all come together for the same thing.
Well, and I think a lot of our audience can associate with that. I mean, when you pick up a basketball or any ball or any sport and you start practicing and put the hours in to become good, and you start getting that recognition and people start patting you on the back and you start having success, it just kind of feeds that drive to continue to see how far you can actually go with it.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's great to feel really good at something, and it is. It's nice to have the recognition sometimes when you put so much effort into it, but also just that internal drive. I'm sure most people, if you get to the college level, it's not just what other people are saying to you, it's you yourself and what you want to do. And so there's that whole how far can I push myself? It's a real thrilling, kind of exhilarating thing to feel.
Right. What were some of the lessons that sports or competition taught you that you have maybe carried over into what you're doing now?
I think a lot of things from sports. I really feel that sports is it's just a powerful way to create leaders and discipline and a whole lot of things. One of them is definitely teamwork. As an athlete who played team sports, almost all my sports that I was interested in were totally related to how you performed with other people, and so that to me is I just became to appreciate the value of different skills and different abilities, and also different just personal leadership styles. So not just their abilities athletically, but also how it's friggin' hard to communicate with people who have different personalities and different ideas, and learning how to do that to be effective is a great skill from sports. And then also discipline. Like when you're getting up at 5:30 a.m. for a morning workout and your friends are recovering from a hangover, there's a big self-discipline motivation. Part of you that has to stay true and stick with it, because it's definitely not glamorous and fun a lot of the time.
Right, and a lot of people don't see that early hours, the training, the pain you go through to get to that level. That's right.
Yeah.
What kind of support do you have from family and friends as you were noticeably talented as an athlete? Were they supportive? Did they encourage you? Or, we talked to some guests that, they were, what drove them was people said they couldn't do it. What was your support system like?
Yeah, I had an amazing support system for my parents, in particular my father, who, to be totally fair, I couldn't have been in the sports I was if he wasn't willing to drive me. I mean, you go to those early morning soccer games, and they start at 5:30 in the morning was the earliest games I would have, and having someone to take me there those types of things. But also I had a dynamic family life where I had some challenges. And so sports were also, when people weren't paying attention, it was just my way of control. I felt good and I knew how to play, and I loved being in the gym and kind of that meditative state that you get in by just shooting around for an hour by yourself. So I had a lot of family support to an extent, but also some of the challenges I was facing, particularly in high school and college, motivated me to just personally say, you know what, I don't care what's going on around me. I'm just going to focus on this.
Right. Well, good. And that's really important to have that support system. What influence did some of your coaches have on you? What did they teach you? What do you remember about coaches you had growing up?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think for most people they have quite a few coaches by the time they're done. And I think there's a few ways you can take that. And sometimes people get really fortunate and have just exceptional coaches throughout, and then other people, have some really bad coaches. I think I had a mix of all people who genuinely were invested in me performing well in the team, but coming with all different abilities and also awareness and their own knowledge of the game. And so I think for me, I really made an effort, and again, this goes back to my support system and my father of telling me that it's never okay to yell at a coach. It's never okay to be disrespectful, but it is okay to think differently. And so I think throughout my time, I had moments where I'd get really frustrated with the coaches that I had, and others, they were great role models and leaders. And one thing I learned from that is you can't control who you have necessarily as your coach or as your influencer, the person telling you what to do, but you can control how you respond to it. And it's another great skill that if you work at it, and not saying that I did it perfectly, but it certainly gave me some things to consider and ways to handle situations after sport.
So it kind of goes back to what you talked about a second ago with leadership. Really, leadership begins with ourselves first, and having a father who kind of mentors you with understanding that don't be disrespectful, but if you believe something, not right, or, to certainly speak up. And it sounds like that's some of the things that you were able to take from that.
Definitely. And it also just, so if you don't like the situation and at the moment you're not able to change it, what can you do to make it better? And I guess sometimes that's also a personal motivator of, well, I'm going to have to work harder, or I'm going to have to learn a new way to communicate with my teammates, or I'm going to have to figure out a way to communicate to my coach that we can connect. And it's a challenge, but it's how you get better.
Right, and those are definitely skills you can take with you no matter whatever is next for any athlete. You can take that skill with you into working with, in the next career, job, whatever you have. So that's very important.
Definitely.
What was the situation where you realized where you were going to have to maybe do something other than play basketball, and that maybe whatever came next, that you could be successful? Was there a situation that happened or that you can think of?
You're asking at the moment that I realized I may not always play basketball until I retire?
Yes. Well, the question I was asking is, what was the situation where you realized that you were going to have to do something other than play basketball for a living?
Yeah, that's one that I definitely had to think about at different stages of life. I mean, the first was, I'm really serious. I really wanted to play in the NBA, and I used to sign NBA cards with my own name when I was probably like 8, envisioning my future career. So having that realization that one, that it's very difficult to reach any top level, and so starting, I think, at a young age to think maybe that's not the only thing that I'm going to be doing. And then certainly by college, I went to school for business because I knew even as a female athlete, if I was going to be playing basketball, even if I did go past college, it certainly wasn't going to be my life career option. And so some of the realizations came just at those kind of poignant moments in my life, and also other interests. Like I love sports, but that's not the only thing I'm really passionate about. And I didn't want to sell myself short and just go, okay, well, let's just only focus on this, because that at some point this ends. And so it's really scary, I think, for athletes, of being like, oh, this is a whole new point of life. Not everyone recognizes your face, or you don't get all the positive encouragement you just had 10 minutes before. It can be tough.
Well, and becoming an elite athlete certainly takes a great deal of time. How were you able to focus on your sports, but also dive into those other interests that you said that you were thinking about?
Yeah, one thing with sports was it wasn't because I loved them so much. It was never, growing up, it was never a chore. It was something that didn't seem like work. So I think I could look at other things that I was interested in or really trying to do relatively well in school was because I didn't see sports as something that was another thing. It was just, that was a part of me. And so I guess getting interested in other entities or other projects, a lot of them related to sports. The SAC, the Student Athlete Advisory Committee, I wanted to be president of the school SAC because I wanted to represent us at the Horizon League SAC meeting, and I wanted to have better opportunities for athletes and also challenge the athletes to be more a part of our community. We were in Detroit, which is this awesome community, and I didn't think we were doing enough to be a part of it, and they were the ones who were supporting us every day and every game. So some of it was really directly related to sports, and then the other is, as I mentioned, I definitely love sports, but there are other interests, and I love business. I love learning about it, and so I tried to do things that just following things that I was passionate about made it easy to do other things, and that's why I think I was able to, is because I had an interest as opposed to thinking it was all chores or tasks.
Right. And were you surprised by how either easy or difficult it was to kind of put the athletic career behind you and move on? Were you surprised for what showed up one way or the other for you, or was it just part of the journey and it was not that big of a deal?
No, I definitely think it was. It was something I knew was coming, and I had seen my other teammates transition, and so it wasn't a surprise. But to be an athlete, and especially in university, it's a full-time job. I think most people agree with that or feel somewhere along the lines of you skip a lot of things because of what you're doing with sports, and it's really difficult. So one of the things I noticed right away is I felt I had a lot of time, and also it was really nice to be able to sleep in on the weekends. So those were some of the perks. But the challenge is, especially, and I imagine for some rather more than me, I was a female basketball player at a smaller Division I school. Like, I didn't have a line around my block waiting for my autograph. That was never me. But for some athletes, that's a huge change of feeling a sense of importance, or that there's a lot of people who are invested in you, and then all of a sudden you have to create a whole new identity for who you are. And so I certainly had a bit of that, just a recognition that, okay, I'm not Caitie the basketball player on campus anymore. I'm just Caitie the student. And so it was tough for some of that, but it was also exciting because now I could do a whole bunch of other things that I hadn't had time or wasn't able to consider because, of course, basketball came first for the most part.
Was there anybody in particular that came into your life at that time, or a situation that came into your life at that time that helped get you or push you into what you're doing now? Well,
yes, and what happened, and this is, again, another step that I think is everyone has moments that define them, and sometimes they come really unexpectedly. It's actually someone who left my life at that time. And so right after basketball season ended, I think it was about a month after my final game, or 5 weeks, my brother passed away. And so that, to me, he was my younger brother, and that's why I ended up going. I missed my graduation to do a family trip to Lebanon. And some of it was just because it was quite difficult to be in the same situation. And that was a defining moment because it put some of my thoughts in perspective. It helped me, I think, become I identified more with my emotions and what I was really doing in life. And then also the trip to Lebanon had a huge impact on where I am now. And that was just going, wow, I live in a conflict-free zone every day of my life, and I always have. And here are people who are really struggling and also live in a constant state of fear. And why is that is that okay, or why am I not acknowledging that? And so I guess it was more about a moment where someone exited my life, and that's what really was a defining moment for me thinking about my future.
Well, I'm certainly sorry to hear about your brother. It sounds like the defining moment propelled you into really taking off with what you're doing now. Tell us more about what happened after the trip, when you got back from the trip from Lebanon, and let's start talking a little bit more about what you're doing now.
Sure. When I got back to Lebanon, I had that job set up. So I started working for Chrysler, which was a very eye-opening experience and taught me a lot of really good things, as well as the challenges of what it meant to be an adult and what it meant to be in the working world. And I think that it was a great experience on some regards, and it also helped me realize really quickly what wasn't as important as I had thought. So professionally, I thought I had wanted to work for a corporation, and also I loved the salary that came with it and the opportunities. But my experience in Lebanon and just kind of reevaluating some things after my brother passed away, I was really impatient to learn more about the world. And so I was privileged because I had that full scholarship. And that's really important to acknowledge the opportunities sometimes that others have. Not everyone has them, but because I didn't have student loans, I was able to quit my job and move to Spain. And I wanted to learn Spanish. And so while I was there, and this is a great opportunity for athletes who are wanting to stay involved, I can say that I was able to coach basketball for 2 summers. And it's just a thought for some people out there. I coached in Mallorca, which is an island in Spain, for 6 weeks, and also in Valencia, and got to stay close to basketball and got paid. I also taught English to make a living. And so while I was there, that really started my journey of wanting to learn more about different cultures and people. And while I was there, I started thinking about international development as a career path, something I had never heard of until I graduated college, and what that meant and basically what that even was. And so that motivated me to volunteer in Uganda, where I spent almost 3 months. And again, a very big privilege because I didn't have the student loan. And so I was able to, with my savings from my job, do some of these things, which of course aren't accessible to everyone. But that's what really got me motivated to be more, I guess, of a global citizen. Like, I started questioning why we only want to, when we say we look at local issues or local problems, we define it by a geographic region. And so I started getting motivated to learn more about why that was and what my role was, and about my privileges. So
right.
that motivated me.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of rich information within that. I mean, just picking up and going to Spain is one thing. A lot of people, don't want to leave their little hometown or, the house they grew up in. Other people want to go explore the world, like what you're talking about. What if you were talking to somebody right now who's currently, let's say, a professional athlete who's currently playing? What kind of advice do you think you could give them, knowing what you know now and knowing what you did now? What kind of advice would you give them in preparation for what's coming for them at some point in their athletic career, making a transition?
I would say that it's really important to surround yourself by good people and people who care about you, not who you are as an athlete. And that's sometimes easier said than done. I totally appreciate that. But one of the biggest things is going through the whole transition, especially for people who are professional athletes or who are at a really high visibility playing, that their reputation or personality is highly visible in their community, is to be around people who have known you before or who have supported you throughout and don't just glamorize your position. I think that's really, really critical. And the other is just to what I think can sometimes happen, and what would happen to me and our teammates sometimes, is we talk about how these were going to be, these are the great moments. There's some really tough things, but it's also a great time, and worrying that this would be the best time of our life. And I would encourage people to absolutely challenge that and say, that's your choice. I think it's awful if you're 30 or 40 or 50 and you say, oh, the best time of my life was 20. I hope the best time of my life is always ahead of me. And so when you start thinking and putting a different look on it, it's important to appreciate and love what you did and also go, yeah, that was a great time. But there's so many exciting new things that you're about to do, and you have this great open slate to do it in, and you'll be able to utilize your prestige as an athlete. When I have applied to jobs, I've done some things that I think are quite interesting or really relevant to the position, and they always want to talk to me about my basketball career. So I think that there's, use that as a force to go forward, but also I really hope and encourage people to think that their best is coming, and that's not the most exciting time of your life. And if you think that, then that's going to happen, and that will be true.
Wow, great words of wisdom. You're listening to the Championship Showcase with Caitie Goddard today. Caitie, what about the athlete that is struggling right now? They're post-career 2 or 3 years and maybe struggling financially, relationship, career. How might they be able to get involved in maybe doing some of the kind of work you're doing, or what kind of advice could you give them to get out of the funk that they may be in currently?
Yeah, well, I first can really emphasize with that, and I also think that this is a huge issue with college sports, and I know the NCAA is actually trying to address it more, is providing support for athletes when they're finished. And it is sometimes you feel like you've just been hung out to dry. You've just been catered and coddled and treated like royalty to some extent, and then all of a sudden there's nothing there for you, or you feel that there's a lack of resources, and I think that that's really challenging and unfair to do that. And so for those who are going through that, I just empathize, and also I can totally understand it, and some of the things that I think really help is to start thinking about who you are now and what are your values now and what's your role now, and how can you use your skills to do stuff in the community and build up your own personal identity. And some of the ways I encourage people to do that is volunteering. So some of the richest moments of my life have been when it's really selfish. It's like, I'm giving back to others, but I'm benefiting way more. And that's in doing things in Detroit. I love working in the Detroit community and in learning more about people and opportunities, and also helping in groups and communities that need some assistance or manpower. And then also definitely just being kind to yourself. I think that's important as well, that it's difficult. And again, surrounding yourself with people who you trust or who you can feel vulnerable with is important, because it is not easy, that's for sure. And probably the more notoriety you have, the more difficult it may be for you to transition out.
Would you recommend somebody getting support if they maybe their current support system's not as strong? How would you encourage them, or what would you say to them, in finding a support group?
Yeah, that's a good point, because it's nice to say, get support, but not provide any suggestions. So one is other teammates or most people who are playing a college sport had sports or teammates before their college team that they may still be close to who went to play in other colleges or other universities, other professional teams. So finding those people that you trust and relying on them and being vulnerable, I guess, to say, I'm struggling. Because if you are, I know a lot of people have. I have seen and talked and have friends who have gone through some big challenges. So one is going with people who know what you're struggling with and can relate to you. And then the other is, if you're really struggling, I think it's important to seek some support that may be professional help. I think that's really strong. And if you're, that's the tough thing and the brave thing to do. But if there's a point where you're not sure where you're going or how to get the resources, or your community isn't supportive and you can't find it, then actively find someone who will do it. I think that's super important, and it will be really helpful.
Great stuff. Great words there. Caitie, share with us about IC3, the Global Volunteer Network, and Good Travel. What can you tell us about those three organizations that I know you're passionate about? What's your role? What's going on? And give us some insights to those areas of your life.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Well, just the ones though. So for those athletes who think that sports are over, the other thing I want to say is that's your choice. And for some people, like, yeah, the aches and pains are perhaps like they've gone out in an injury, and so there's some realistic expectations. But there's so many ways to stay active and still challenge yourself, and that's one of the things I've tried to do. And I'm doing that through working in international development and business. And so any career you can make that happen. And one of the things I'm doing right now is that you had mentioned, and thank you for that in the beginning, that I did a cycling challenge, 500 kilometers through Vietnam, to raise money. And raise money for a great program doing great work with children living with disabilities in Vietnam. And the thing I'm looking at this year to support our project in Uganda, which is one of my favorite places in the world, is we're going to support Julian Foundation by running a marathon. And so, yes, it's not college basketball, or yes, it's not, when I finish, I certainly won't have a world record, or no one's going to be reading about me in the paper. But it's such a cool way to see an amazing country, challenge myself physically, and do it knowing that I'm supporting some great work and great individuals who are making change happen at the grassroots level. So that's one thing, and I will definitely give you the information when we're just about to launch online and have that started. But the thing with IC3 Academy, what I'm really focused on now is young leaders. So as the director, one of the things we're looking at is the mantra, think global, act local, start personal. So while I'm passionate about the international community, I think everyone can play a role right now in creating change within themselves and their local community. They don't have to travel and have a passport to do it. And so what we do is we work with 16 to 20-year-olds who have indicated they're interested in learning more about leadership development, and they really want to create change. And a lot of them have really excited expectations of doing great things in the world. And so we run some workshops that help them to start to see their role and who they are as individuals. They're now growing into adulthood, and then giving them opportunities to travel and to learn more about communities and learn about innovation in different areas and cultures. And so in January, I'll be leading 15 young leaders to Thailand to learn more about endangered wildlife and also how they can take some of the lessons that they learn in the local community back to their home communities, and they're mostly Australians and New Zealanders. But the youth and then working with Julian Foundation, those are the things I'm working on right now, and really passionate about enabling anyone who wants to be a social change maker to do so, and encouraging people to take that role. And then Good Travel is my passion project that I started with two other women who we've had the opportunity to travel quite a bit. And we realized that the tourism industry is one of the largest industries in the world, and we're committed to making it a powerful force for good. So we offer trips to many different countries and can create itineraries where we can guarantee that the local community and the people who you're getting services from and getting to meet are supported, and that the environment around you is benefiting from you being there at any budget level. So that's the things I love doing.
Amazing stuff, Caitie. We really appreciate it. Well, a couple last questions. The listener out there, the athlete out there, male or female, that's thinking, well, geez, Caitie, you're doing a lot of great things. You have degrees. And what about the athlete that graduated from college, maybe with a degree, but doesn't necessarily have a master's in international travel or international communication or political science, and says, man, that's way too much, Caitie. So I won't qualify, or I wouldn't be able to, help make changes. What would you say to the athlete who has that kind of mindset?
I would say change the circle of people that you're around if that's what they're telling you. I think the biggest lesson I have personally had has been outside of my education. And not that it's been, I've appreciated my education and the degrees I have, but for me, travel has been my biggest teacher. And again, travel for some people doesn't have to be internationally or by purchasing a flight. You can travel by reading books. You can travel by talking to people from different countries or different cultures or who speak different languages than you. So I really challenge the notion that degrees or travel are the international travel are the ways that you do things. I think that for people who genuinely want to make a change, there's so many great individuals in local communities all around the United States who are starting small and doing big things. And so if that's an interest someone has, I'm happy to talk to them and brainstorm, because there is no way that a degree makes you any better than anyone else, or internationally traveling makes you any more capable. I think the biggest thing is the passion behind it.
Great stuff, Caitie. We were just about out of time. What do you see your role as a leader, and what is your legacy that you want to leave for others?
Well, that's something I guess I think I change a bit. I think I want to be humble in what I can do, but also challenge myself to be the best I can. And you had mentioned or asked me about a mantra, and I guess I really love quotes. That's how I get motivated. And so one of the things that I have really tried to put in my life is what I want to leave is something that Nelson Mandela said, and he talks about that. His quote is that what counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is what difference we have made to the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life we lead. And to me, that's really important. And so I hope when my legacy has people remembering that I was, no matter what I was capable of doing, that I was committed to the difference, making a difference in the lives of others.
Amazing stuff. Teamwork, leadership, discipline, the best times are still ahead. You've been listening to the Championship Showcase with Caitie Goddard. Well, everyone, I certainly hope you've enjoyed our conversation with Caitie like I have. Again, you've been listening to the Championship Showcase, Secrets for Success in the playing field of competition to the field of life. I want to thank Caitie Goddard for joining us, and we encourage those of you who feel you might need some assistance through your career transition, please get the necessary help you need. You have purpose and you have value. For now, we wish you all the best. Caitie, thanks again for joining us, and we wish you the best in all. Yep, we wish you the best in all that you're doing, and we'll definitely get your information out to our listeners. So if they'd like to contact you, they certainly can. Any last thoughts that you may have for our listeners?
One thing is I think what this program is doing is great. I think it's something that's really highly needed with athletes, and I really hope that this gets out to all the athletes out there who are considering what it means to be in transition and how they move forward. And I just encourage people to the biggest thing is that the glory days of athletics are great, but there's so many more exciting things ahead to look forward to.
Awesome stuff. Caitie, thank you. Again, for everybody out there, you've been listening to the Championship Showcase with Dominic Militello. For now, we wish you all the best always. Thanks for listening.